Welcome back to the Sports Nerds podcast here on the 515 Podcast Network. I'm Brock Bierman alongside, as always, with Dawson Livingston. And we got some big news, really, that I don't think anyone really expected. I do have a funny story in terms of the fact that this actually happened this week, or actually today as we're recording here on a Tuesday. I think this will probably be going live Wednesday morning. But Robert Saleh, the head coach, or I guess we should say former head coach of the New York Jets, was fired this morning, was escorted out of the building, which is a funny thing to think about because this and the fact that he was the earliest a Jets coach has been fired under this current management and ownership, I think. And that's saying something because Adam Gase was stinky, to say the least.
Man, forgot about that.
This came out really early this morning. I think from the sounds of it, he was escorted out, wasn't given the chance to address the team whatsoever. The Jets really just went, yeah, we don't really want you anymore. And yeah, I mean, what are your early reactions to this? Honestly, not shocking that he got fired. Honestly, not shocking in terms of the fact that he actually ended up getting fired at one point. It's the fact that it happened now. We're heading into week 6. And he's already been fired.
Yeah, I didn't think he was going to be the first head coach fired this year. I honestly thought it was going to be Doug Peterson in Jacksonville, but they were able to get a win on Sunday, so I think Peterson's safe for at least one more week. But for all the people saying Aaron Rodgers had nothing to do with this, I call baloney on that.
I know what you want to say.
Yeah, I just never really thought Aaron Rodgers believed in Robert Saleh. Don't get me wrong. When Robert Saleh was the defensive coordinator for the Niners, that defense was unreal. And the Jets defense now is still unreal. But Saleh and Rodgers were never really on the same page. There's that one picture, I don't know if you've seen it, where Saleh tries to go and like hug Rodgers after like a drive or something and give him like a pat, and Rodgers is like pushing him away.
Nah, dude.
And at the time, people were like, oh, that's nothing. Rodgers just wanted him off. And it's like, no, that's a subtle little thing that I think means more now after the fact that we realize that Saleh got fired. So I just think that's interesting. Yeah, where does this really leave the Jets? I don't remember the intern's name.
Jeff Ulbrich.
Okay. I think he's the
defensive coordinator, or was the defensive coordinator. Previous positions, he was a defensive coordinator, assistant coach for the Atlanta Falcons. Started out as a assistant special teams coordinator for the Seattle Seahawks in 2010, 2011, and made his journey to UCLA before ending up in Atlanta for about 5-6 years. Can you
imagine if Nat Hackett would have been the interim head coach? How funny that would have been.
Yeah, that would have been honestly.
Oh man,
funny.
that would have made it that much funnier that they fired Rob Saleh for Nat Hackett. Then you would have known for sure that Rodgers had a part in this.
And I think that's maybe why, if he did, which I do have a hunch that he did have a role in getting him fired, but I think they made this move to cover him up a little bit so it's not completely obvious. But Saleh specifically finishes 20-36 with a winning percentage of 35%. With the New York Jets, best season was his last 2 seasons where he went 7-10 in each of those seasons. 2-3 this year, 4-13 his first year. So we did improve from year 1 to year 2, but kind of fizzled out in year 3. Obviously, had to deal with Zach Wilson in that situation. And when you lose Aaron Rodgers in the first 30 seconds of the game of last year, that doesn't help either. But let's be honest, his time here in New York wasn't really that good anyways. I'm shocked they didn't fire him last year. I think they didn't want to because of the PR backlash of, oh, you fired him after Aaron Rodgers gets hurt? Really? That's what you do? Like, that's your scapegoat to get rid of him, is having a bad year after Rodgers gets hurt. But, it's just, I think they should have done it last year.
I completely agree, especially with the way the league's going. Everyone is hiring offensive coaches, and it seems to be working out for. I mean, look at every successful team right now in the league. Kansas City, obviously Andy Reid's an offensive guy. Minnesota, Kevin O'Connell was an offensive wizard. Atlanta, oh man, why am I blanking on the Atlanta coaches?
Raheem Morris.
Raheem Morris. Actually, I think he's a defensive guy now that I say that. Green Bay, I know they are struggling, but like,
Yeah.
you see what I'm saying? Like, the league is trending towards all offensive head coaches, and that's where all the success is. There was a stat: you take the last five Super Bowls and compare the head coaches. 9 of them were all offensive guys. The only non-offensive guy was Bill Belichick. So take that for what it's worth. But yeah, I think this move should have been done last year.
Yeah, I completely agree. Now it's just a situation of, is New York really a job that people want to come and coach for? Because Aaron Rodgers is getting up there in age. The roster is kind of just a mess, honestly. They have some talent. Breece Hall, they have some good receivers, defense, Sauce Gardner and all them. But, like, the roster is a mess, in my opinion.
They could do the funniest thing ever. Hey, Bill Belichick, you really like sitting at home on your couch? I don't know, man. I'm not saying it's going to happen, but I'm also not saying it's not going to happen, if that makes sense.
I was worried you were about to mention someone else because I mentioned Breece Hall.
No. I just think if you only have Rodgers for the rest of this year, most likely, and maybe one more, dude, like, push all your chips in, hire Belichick, trade for Davante Adams. Like, if you're going to go all in, you might as well, like, forego 5 years down the road. Like, this is your one shot the Jets have had. This is the closest the Jets have been to, like, Super Bowl contention since, 2010? And even before that, like, the 60s and 70s. Like, the Jets really haven't been good since me and you have been alive. So, I think if you're going to go all in, I mean, might as well go balls to the walls.
And you mentioned Davante Adams. I guess this is the other biggest high headline of the NFL right now. His time's done in Oakland. Every time we talk about the Raiders, I say Oakland, and I'm always going to say Oakland. So people, it's okay. But anyways, Las Vegas and Davante, they're pretty much ending it. It's not going to be a thing. I mean, it wasn't going to work out after they got rid of Carr, let's be honest. And for some reason, they thought they were going to be able to keep Davante happy, and he's not. He doesn't want to lose. Looking at the Fox Sports posted some odds on the next spot for Davante Adams trading wise, and this was posted today around noon. So this was after Saleh got fired, and New York is still the favorite, minus 150, and Baltimore is number 2 with plus 250. The list goes New York, Baltimore, Buffalo, Pittsburgh, Washington, New Orleans, Las Vegas, saying that he stays with the Raiders, Dallas, and Kansas City. I'm honestly shocked that Kansas City's all the way down there. Or am I just kind of blowing smoke thinking that Kansas City would actually pull the trigger on that? Or I guess it's more of the Raiders not probably wanting to give Kansas City any more weapons. I solved the issue myself.
Yeah. I just don't think the Raiders want to make the Chiefs better.
Yeah, that's a good point.
So it's tough because I think Davante, if you were to trade for him, I think it's like 12-ish million you would have to have in salary cap space. So I'm trying to pull up cap space right now for all teams. So, like, oh, this can't be right. Team like the Browns, they have the money, but they're not going to trade for him. The Jets do theoretically have 17 million, so they could afford him. What's another team? The Steelers were in the market for a wide receiver for IU. Maybe they could go get a guy like a Devontae. The Ravens only have 4 million, but you could tell the Raiders, hey, we want you to take most of the salary. We'll give you a better draft pick if you take most, if not all, of the remaining salary for this year. So that could work out. I just don't think that the Raiders want to. I don't think anyone right now in the league wants to make a trade with the Chiefs, to be quite honest.
Yep.
So the fact that the Chiefs are all the way down there, odds-wise, just doesn't really shock me.
It's kind of like the opposite of the NBA, where like the NFL teams don't want to trade with each other to make it one team like super more like just a super team. Like I feel like Carolina and the 49ers, that trade with Christian McCaffrey was kind of a rarity. You don't really see that where like a team just kind of sends an amazing player to a Super Bowl contender to make him even better. But
it doesn't really make a whole lot of sense to me. Like, I guess you have like the rivalry aspect, like, hey, Chiefs and Raiders have been rivals for the last 60 years. But wouldn't you like be wishing against the Chiefs? Like, wouldn't you be like, I don't know, especially with the Raiders playing the Chiefs 2 more times this year. Like, if you beat the Chiefs, that draft pick only gets better. That helps you. Like,
that's a good point.
I don't know. I just never really get the whole stigma of why teams don't trade with other teams.
Yeah.
I mean, I guess the flip side of that is Buffalo just keeps making horrible trades with the Chiefs for some reason or another, but I don't know, it just doesn't make a whole lot of sense to me.
But imagine if the Raiders traded for Travis Kelce one day, though. That would be hard for you to watch Travis Kelce play with the Raiders, right?
But I'm going to be real. I don't think we see the Chiefs in that position anytime soon.
Yeah.
Nor do I think the Raiders are going to be in a position to trade for good players like that. I think the Raiders, they're an okay team, but I don't know. I think, like you said, Devontae's days and I almost said it. Vegas are outnumbered.
I actually do you have the cap thing still pulled up?
I do.
What's Buffalo? What's their situation?
$3.3 million.
So they would have to do a lot of bargaining with this.
So again, the Raiders have been asking for a 2nd-round pick, I believe, or something to the equivalent of that. They're not going to get a 2nd-round pick, I don't think. I think Devontae's really more of a 3rd-round pick. But if you're the Raiders, you could use, taking the rest of his salary for this season as leverage to get a better draft pick. And I think Devontae is on the last year, or not on the last year, but there's an out after this year. So like if you traded for Devontae, you realized it didn't work and you wanted to cut your losses, you could still get out from under the trade. Like it wouldn't penalize you that much. So I don't know. And it sounds like a trade's happening sooner rather than later, probably within the next week or so. Because we're only 3 or 4 weeks away from the trade deadline anyway. And I think the Raiders really want to get him out of there. So it'll be interesting. We'll see.
Yeah. Random one, just top of my head. What's the Packers situation? Not that he would go back there.
$14 million. So they theoretically have the money. And again, at each week this goes by, his number for this season goes down. So like if they wait to the absolute last second and like the trade deadline the day of, it's probably only 7 million maybe. So maybe waiting it out is better for other teams, but maybe then you take the risk with the Raiders, just trade him out to some other team. So it'll be interesting to watch with the next few weeks.
For sure. Let's get into our players of the week. Dawson, before we got started, liked the image that I picked for his player of the week, which is funny because we both have a player of the week from the same game. So let's get right into it. And actually it was from our Thursday night game. We finally had a good Thursday night game. Finally had a Thursday night game that was worth watching. Obviously, we're talking about the Falcons coming out with a 6-point win against the Buccaneers. 36-30 was the final score of that one. And let's get to Dawson's player of the week. Obviously, someone was going to mention him. Kirk Cousins, 42 of 58, 42 completions, 58 passing attempts.
That's the more insane part to me.
509 yards, which is a Falcons team record, on the night that they honored Matt Ryan, who previously held the record. Matt Ryan is one of the most unlucky players, like all time top 5 like most unlucky players in the history of sports. He's got to be up there.
Oh yeah,
4 touchdowns for Kirko, and
I think he had a pick.
He did have a pick, but still came out with an overtime win against the Buccaneers. What were your thoughts on his performance? Obviously, you made him the player of the week, so you probably thought highly of this performance.
I mean, was this not the best game of the week?
Oh, yeah.
I guess you could argue Baltimore and Cincinnati, or Houston and Buffalo. I think this was easily the most fun game to watch all week. The fact that they threw the ball for 58 times is utterly insane. And the fact that Kirk Cousins had a 79.9 QBR is even more impressive. Still, might add, Brock will like this, still less than Baker's QBR in this game, which shows you how pass happy and how well the quarterbacks are doing in this game. So that's cool to see. Yeah, I mean, Kirk Cousins is the only quarterback ever, I think this is the stat, I could be wrong, where he's thrown for 450 yards with 3 different teams in
what
one
was
game.
that? Sorry,
That he's thrown for 450 yards in a game with 3 different teams. So obviously Redskins, Commanders, Vikings, and now Falcons. So kind of cool for Kirk Cousins. Big Kirk go.
He was. Can you guess? I'll give you the year. It was the 2021 season. Who was the last guy to throw for 500 yards?
Derek Carr.
It was not.
Oh man, I don't know. Not Pat Mahomes.
Joe Burrow.
Okay.
525 yards versus
Why
the
am I
Baltimore
thinking Derek
Ravens.
Carr had a 500?
He did. 2016 though against Tampa Bay.
Okay, my bad.
Where he had 513. Yeah, Pat Mahomes has never had a 500-yard game, but he hasn't needed it.
No.
That's how good he is. He doesn't need to do that. But I'm looking at this list. This is kind of hilarious. Ben Roethlisberger is mentioned every 5 people. And
People
I'm
will forget about the Killer Bees, bro. Dude. That was my childhood in the NFL, watching the Killer Bees. Le'Veon Bell, Antonio Brown, Ben Roethlisberger, bro. That was so much fun to watch.
Okay, I'll give you the team. There's no way you'll be able to guess this guy. 2012, Houston versus Jacksonville. Houston player, former quarterback. Okay, you're awesome, dude. That's awesome that you're Matt Schaub, 527 yards. So even Matt Schaub has a 500 plus passing yard game. But no, I just wanted to look that up. So it's been pretty much almost 3 years. We're getting close to the 3-year anniversary of Joe Burrow's 500-yard passing game. But great performance by Kirk Cousins. Obviously, he's fun to watch, dude. If he can get that ring at some point, I do think he's a Hall of Famer. I think he's a borderline Hall of Famer right now because of that. I mean, we need to do a discussion at some point with certain quarterbacks, just yes or no kind of thing with certain ones, because I know some people think certain quarterbacks are Hall of Famers just because they got that one ring, and some people think that they're not because they're not. I don't know. I'm
not to elaborate on that.
No, there's certain players. We'll go through it. Maybe next week or some point if we have a downtime in news stuff. I'll do a list of quarterbacks in the NFL, and I'll just get your opinions on whether you think they're a Hall of Famer or not. My player of the week, I'm going Drake London from the same game, same team. Versus the Buccaneers, he had 12 receptions, 154 yards, 1 touchdown. Was targeted 14 times, so he basically caught almost every ball that he was thrown to. So great game for him. I was going to choose Kurt as well, but I felt like picking the same person is not great. So I went with the guy that helped him through that week. And it's Drake London for this week for the Falcons and for me in the player of the week. Going to our power rankings. Had some movement here. Let's see if I can pull up last week's power rankings. So last week, Dawson had Kansas City at 1, Detroit at 2, Minnesota at 3, Tampa Bay at 4, and Buffalo at 5. And some of these teams
got some movement
since lost, so we'll get into it. And Dawson now has this as his top 5, and I'll let Dawson explain and list out his top 5 in his power rankings.
All right. I didn't want to do it. I tried every which way to not put this team at number 2, just because I think this is a fraudulent 5-0 team. But
welcome to the party.
Gosh darn it, they're 5-0. I can't. We're 5 weeks in the season, and they're beating good teams. Minnesota's got to go at 2. Obviously, Kansas City's going to be number 1 for me until they lose a game or go on a bad stretch. They're going to be number 1 for a while. Minnesota at 2. They had, I don't know if an impressive win over the Jets, but they beat the Jets. Darnold did not have a good game at all. So that's a little concerning if you're Minnesota.
He almost threw it away.
Right. And the If it wasn't for a 63-yard pick six for Minnesota, who knows if Minnesota wins that game. Regardless, they won. Houston, congrats on making the top five for the first time this season, or maybe the second time. Yeah, you get an impressive win over Buffalo like that. It got a little close at the end, but they were dominating in the first half. Houston, I think, is a real legit threat to win the Super Bowl. And I know everyone, that was their sleeper team that would make a Super Bowl run in the preseason. I don't know if I was necessarily that high on them making a Super Bowl run, but I'm a believer now. Detroit, they didn't play this week, so I know they dropped a couple spots, but with Minnesota and Houston winning, they had to move up. And Baltimore, and this probably is the one that shocks a lot of people, Baltimore being at 3. Baltimore, after the first 2 weeks of the season, has looked dominant. Like, I'm going to pull up their schedule, of course. Obviously, they lose the first game to Kansas City. They lose a weird game to Vegas, which I don't really know how much stock you should really be putting into that. I mean, especially now. They end up beating the Cowboys, which they were dominating most of the game. Fourth quarter, they let it get a little close. Absolutely shut out the Bills and won in the shootout against the Bengals, which I didn't think Lamar was capable of winning a shootout. So kudos to him. So yeah, that rounds out my top 5. Chiefs, Vikings, Texans, Lions, Ravens.
How happy are you that you were able to move Buffalo out?
So very happy. I know you're going to have one team that I'm not in your top 4, but
because they were in my top 5 last week.
What?
Because they were in my top 5 last week.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I know you're happy about Buffalo being out of there, but my top 5 last week was Kansas City at 1. I already had Minnesota at 2. So, welcome to the party, Dawson, and bringing the Vikings in at number 2. I can't wait to celebrate when they collapse like they always do. And
Sam Darnold is on pumpkin, bro. He's on pumpkin watch where he's going to just have a Sam Darnold game. He's been playing way too good for way too long now. He's down. He's due for a New York Jets Sam Darnold game.
Yep. And I also put Tampa Bay in my top 5, had them at 3, Buffalo at 4, and I made the argument for Washington being in the top 5. Well, Washington continues to win. Minnesota continues to win. Tampa Bay and Buffalo decided to lose or just have disappointing performances. So they're out. Washington moves all the way to 3 for me. My top 5 this week, Kansas City, Minnesota, Washington, Houston, and I'm putting Atlanta there at number 5. Kansas City, obviously, they're not in cruise control because they've had a lot of crap happen to them. But the fact that they've had all this crap happen and they're still 5-0, that's impressive to me. Being able to hold the Saints also to only 13 points after what they've been able to do to some teams earlier in the season, that's impressive to me. So I'm going to put them at 1. I'm not going to lie, for a split second, I thought about putting Minnesota at number 1. The only reason I didn't is because I think Kansas City has played more impressive teams, or at least more teams that the media is hyped up heading into the year. And the fact that the Vikings played the Giants.
Hey, Minnesota beat the number 4 team on your power rankings. Not only beat them, they throttled them.
That's a good point.
They played.
That's a good point. But at the same time, the Chiefs won by 10 against the Falcons. So I guess it's one of those things where you got to weigh out the situations. And Kansas City won at Atlanta. Minnesota won at home against the Texans. But it's one of those things you can't take the Super Bowl champs out of the top 5. It's a difficult thing, even if they were worse than last year. But I think they're better than they were last year. So I put Kansas City at 1. The Vikings, another impressive win. Impressive, but interesting win because obviously New York has since fired Robert Saleh, as well as Sam Darnold, like you mentioned, looked a little shaky. Not saying that he's going back to Sam Darnold of the New York Jets, which is kind of funny that they played against the New York Jets in that game. But
he's on pumpkin watch, bro.
Yeah, I get it. Washington, dude, I really love this team. They're so fun.
They're fun to watch.
They're dominating some of these teams. The Giants, Cardinals, and Browns have been on their schedule, so you can't really give them the full credit. that they probably deserve. I think you can make an argument for Houston being over them, but because I had Washington on my top 5 last week and they won this week, I feel like they have to go over Houston. We'll see on the performance this week because they play the Ravens at Baltimore. If they come out with a W, I think that this number 3 spot in the power rankings for me fits really well for Washington. Another unbelievable performance for the rookie in Jaden Daniels. 1 touchdown, did have an interception, but also 82 yards on the ground. By far my favorite to win the Rookie of the Year.
Did you see the stat that Jaden Daniels is the first player ever through the first 5 games of the season, rookie or not, to have 1,000 passing yards and 300 rushing yards? Or I think it's 250 rushing yards.
Wow.
He's the first player ever. Not even Lamar, which really shocked me because
I would have guessed Cam Newton.
Yeah, that too. Yeah. Kind of crazy. Daniels is, I think he's the 5th most bet MVP.
I mean,
let me see.
MVP?
These MVP odds are skyrocketing. I'm trying to figure this out.
Shout out the Commanders fan that invested in that way early.
No kidding. Okay, hold on. Yeah, he's 5th in most sports books to win MVP. It goes Mahomes, Lamar, Allen, Stroud, Jay Daniels. And get Sam Darnold out of here, bro. Oh my god, dude.
At this point, you want him to suck.
I'm preying on the Sam Darnold downfall.
That's hilarious. But keeping going with my power rankings, Houston at number 4. Again, there's an argument that you can put them at 3 over the Commanders. They play a close game against the Patriots, and the Commanders come out with a win against the Ravens. I think, again, like I said, Commanders are a solid spot for number 3. The Texans, though, could obviously move up with a big win against New England and the Commanders losing. Even if the Commanders honestly sneak out against the Ravens, I think depending on how big of a beatdown the Houston Texans can have against the Patriots, because the Patriots defense hasn't been absolutely terrible this year. So it's one of those things where it's like, if the offense of the Texans can show up and just outperform and just kill them, I think you can make an argument on why I can move them up. And then I have the Falcons, who I didn't have as my favorite to win the NFC South. So shout out the Falcons for proving me wrong so far this year. They got that huge head-to-head matchup victory against the Buccaneers and the Saints in their own division. So that's a huge upside for their season as it continues. And they go to Carolina this week. So as long as they don't just fumble the bag, they should be 4-2 heading into the following. Oh, actually, they have a bye week this week. So next week. No, wait, no. No, they do play this week.
They do.
They do play this week against the Panthers. Sorry.
Hey,
numbers are
Atlanta,
messing me up.
If you somehow, some way drop this game to Carolina, you are banned from all my power rankings. You just, I don't care. I don't care if you finish the season.
I think you said that last week about someone. I can't remember.
The Bengals had no, that wasn't a close game. Who was I thinking? Who lost to the Panthers? The Raiders?
Yeah.
So the Raiders I don't care if the Raiders finish the season undefeated and don't lose a game. They're done. They're not on my power rankings. Granted, I don't think the Raiders were going to be on the power rankings to be.
I think you even said just because it was a close game against the Bengals that you're not going to.
Yeah, well, at this point, the Bengals being 1-4, they're not. That's done. But that's my thing every week. If you lose to the Panthers, you are disqualified from all top 5 contention.
But yeah, just to recap here, Dawson had his power rankings 1 through 5 being Kansas City, Minnesota, Houston, Detroit, and Baltimore. And my power 5 this week, Kansas City, Minnesota, Washington, Houston, and Atlanta. Let's get into highlighting some of these games. You're smiling. What happened?
I just remember that Kansas City plays the Panthers. If Kansas City loses the Panthers, I'm going to cry, dude.
You're going to have to ban them from your power rankings.
They will be banned from the power rankings if they drop the game against the Panthers.
That would be something. That would be something.
But they don't play until like week 12. Oh no.
No, you can't make exceptions just because it's
I won't.
They're going to be like
that's biased.
They're going to be 10-0 heading into that one, and then they're going to like lose 36-3.
All right, Kansas City, don't be on pumpkin watch that week.
let's get into highlighting some of the biggest games of the week. I mean, we've already kind of talked about the Jets and Vikings game. It was basically just the Vikings were able to hold off the Jets. Honestly, Rodgers didn't look really that good at all. The Jets don't look good, which is probably why Robert Saleh got fired.
When you look at Rodgers, his last like 6 years in Green Bay, what do you think? He easily had the most success when he was with Matt LaFleur, but I think he hated playing in Matt LaFleur's system because all the motion and misdirection. And now you could see with the Jets, it's literally just Rodgers dropbacks and pass, and it's just either a Breece Hall handoff or Garrett Wilson drag route, or maybe a streak. There's not really a whole lot of complexity with this offense. And if all else fails, Rodgers just chucks it up to Lazard anyway. Like,
yep.
I don't know.
And he missed some catches. Lazard did, not Rodgers.
Like, if you're the Jets, how can you go? I know that they were down early. They were down 10-0 at the end of the first. How do you throw the ball 54 times and give Breece Hall only 9 carries? Like,
I think
that's
that
criminal.
has to be a big reason why Saleh is not there. I think there's a lot of. I know Rodgers having a little bit of impact on this is not shocking to people if it ever comes out that he did have impact. It's basically you just assume at this point that he did. But there's a lot of things. Breece Hall not getting a lot of touches. The fact that Lazard kind of is Rodgers' number one target. Lazard is a decent receiver. He can't be the number one guy, I feel like, for a team that wants to compete for a Super Bowl.
Which makes me think if they ended up trading for Devontae, would that not just kick Garrett Wilson down to the third receiver? He's not the third, like, talent-wise. He's probably the second, maybe even the best receiver on that roster.
But he's Rodgers, the best right now.
I'm saying if they traded for Adams.
Oh, yeah.
Would that make Garrett Wilson the pseudo wide receiver 3? Even though none of us think that Allen Lazard is talent-wise better than Garrett Wilson. It's just Rodgers has prior experience playing with Lazard and Devontae Adams than he does with Garrett Wilson.
Yep.
So which could make some uncomfortable situations happen in New York.
And I will say Wilson did have a good game last week. He was targeted 22 times, so maybe it's a sign that things may be changing.
They passed the ball 54 times though. That's where I'm getting at. Like, you gotta be able to run the ball.
They need to get Devontae Adams to at least get some kind of momentum, because their momentum right now with that current roster is completely gone. And the longer that Rodgers is struggling, the more the Jets fans are going to lose hope again. That's just what they do at this point. So it's unfortunate for them. Some games that we can just kind of gloss over. Dolphins close win against the Patriots. I don't think the Dolphins scored a touchdown. Or was it all field goals? Honestly, because it was 15-10 was the final score. All field goals. Maybe we should have given the Dolphins kicker the field player of the week.
I believe the Patriots could have won the game, but Jalen Polk didn't get his second foot down. Which I think they were down 15-10, and then that touchdown obviously would have put them up. So
got to get those toes down. But Patriots fall to 1-4. Dolphins without Tua fall to 2-3. I think it sounds like Tua might be coming back here in a couple weeks. We'll see if that actually happens. We'll have a discussion if and when that announcement is made. Browns fall again 1-4. 34-13 was the final score for the Commanders, getting the W there. Just another game that Deshaun Watson's playing, and unfortunate that Jameis Winston had to get put in that game and get an L by his name.
Cleveland. Like, the fans I feel bad for, because, like, they really haven't seen that many good Browns teams in their lifetime. They had a one good year, like 2 years. No, it was longer than that, like 3 or 4 years ago during COVID when they made the playoffs, played the Chiefs. But, like, man, a lot of Browns fans, I see it on Twitter all the time, are like, well, what if we would have had Baker right now? And Baker, to his credit, is 3-2 with Tampa Bay right now. They made the playoffs last year. They kept it close with the Lions last year. Like, I don't know. Poor Cleveland fans is all I'm going to say.
Makes me wonder how much it was Baker or how much it was Stefanski.
I think I think there's issues on both ends. I think 95% of it, or maybe 90% on Watson, just not being very good anymore. I think some of it, though, has to go on Stefanski.
I mean, how long has he been there?
Stefanski?
2020?
Yeah, that sounds right.
So he's been there since 2020, and they really haven't done anything except for that fluky run in the playoffs. So
Right.
I don't know. I think they will get rid of their coach before they suffer that contract and just pay out Deshaun. That's the problem.
Oh, for sure. I can't consciously think that Stefanski thinks Watson should be the guy right now. Does that make sense?
I think
Stefanski knows that it's time to cut their losses with Watson and bench him. The front office will not allow for that to happen.
Do you think that you're going to hate me? Do you think that's what Kurt Ferentz is feeling about Cade McNamara?
Yep.
Because of the NIL money that's in that? Or do you think it's because Kurt Ferentz is stubborn?
No, I think it's both. But I think it's 70-30 that the NIL is given McNamara a good chunk of change to play quarterback at Iowa and have 3 second half turnovers. So, and hasn't thrown a passing touchdown against a Power 5 school
championship game
since I was a freshman in college. I'm a senior now.
Versus Iowa.
Yep.
His last passing touchdown was against an Iowa defense.
Makes me sad.
But getting back to the NFL, we don't need to talk Broncos and Raiders because I just we should focus more on like the big games that had a big impact. Here's one. Ravens and Bengals. What a messy overtime. Both teams were trying to lose.
Oh, man.
Final score 41-38. Multiple turnovers, multiple just mishaps from both teams. And then Derrick Henry escapes for a huge run that sets up Justin Tucker for a chip shot for Justin Tucker and gives the Ravens the win. Henry had 92 yards, but 51 of those were from one run, which was in that play that set up the Ravens for that game-winning kick. And I think it was funny because they were talking on the broadcast, Evan McPherson in the overtime when the Ravens turned the ball over, that he had never missed on whatever side of the field that they were on in that stadium ever in his career. And he completely shanked it to the left. To be fair, it was bad handling by the placeholder. But I was like, of course that happens. You never say that as a broadcaster, dude. You can never say that that this guy hasn't missed, blah, 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 is doing really well. The Iowa kicker this week, he was 6 for 6 heading into the game, right?
Drew Stevens, yeah.
This is a completely side note. We were watching the game in the production room, getting ready for the Iowa State game. They showed that on the broadcast, and it was muted. But I was like, hey, guys, look, I'm a broadcaster. He's 6 for 6 on the year, hasn't missed at all. It's been doing really solid. And then I went, okay, now he's going to miss. And he missed it, and I was like, that's my bad. And everybody's like, I don't blame you. So I apologize.
I think Brock gets joy out of my suffering and my team's inability to put points on the board.
You're a Chiefs fan. I think you're fine.
They can't.
That's why I don't feel bad. That's why I don't feel bad, because you're a Chiefs fan.
Fair enough. Yeah, going back on this game though, what were the Bengals doing in overtime? Like, Burrow had 400 passing yards and 5 touchdowns, and you thought the best course of action in overtime was handoff. When Jamar Chase was unguardable this game, 10 receptions, 193 yards,
of the
and
season
touchdown.
for him.
Like, dude, what are we doing, Zach Taylor? And granted, I don't know if this is true or if Zach Taylor's just saying this so he gets less of the pressure. He did say Burrow audibled out of one of the passing plays and turned it into a run.
But
whether that's true or not, regardless, why were there 3 straight runs when you had been passing the ball at will against this Baltimore secondary? That's the part I will never understand, especially when Chase had 2 touchdowns. Higgins had 2 touchdowns. Like,
I don't know which play he was. I don't know which play he's highlighting that he would have checked out of that. But if you would know on the sideline that your quarterback made a check. Call timeout then.
Literally. So the first down, run to the left side, no gain. Second down, run to the right side, 3 yards. Third down, run to the right side, no gain. Like, what are we doing, Cincinnati? What are we doing? Like, that is the difference between you being 2-3, tied with Baltimore, having hope, to now you're 1-4, you're winless at home, and I wouldn't say all hope is lost, but all hope is almost lost, if that makes sense.
They are on the road the next 2 weeks against teams that if they lose to them, they're going to be making, I think they're going to be making moves sooner rather than later.
How many teams do you think have made the playoffs after starting 1-4? I feel like I've done this every week with the Bengals, but I like these.
Are we doing percentage or how many teams?
How many teams in total? So for
6.
context, you kind of low shot that. 15.
Oh.
15.
Oh, wow.
So 243 teams have started a season, or 253 teams have started their season 1-4. 15 have made the playoffs. The last team that did that was the 2020 Washington Commanders.
So. Oh, wow. So the Bengals are on the road.
So this applies to the Bengals and the Rams, I believe. Two teams that I think are still going to be good.
No, the injuries to the Rams are out. I'm sorry. Yeah. We can get into that division. The Giants and Browns are the two teams the Bengals play on the road. If they go even 1-1, I'm sorry. Like if they go 0-2 there, there's going to be moves made both in the front office, coaching staff, and roster. I truly believe it
which is unfortunate because I think this is the best Bengals offense they've had.
This is the best one they're going to have under Burrow because Higgins is gone after this year.
Oh yeah.
No, it's not looking good for Cincinnati, and it's kind of disappointing because again, it looked like we were going to have a decent rivalry between them and the Chiefs over the last couple of years. I mean, the 2 times or the few times we've seen them play, it's been fun, but recently it's not looking like it's going to be like that. Looking at other games,
they could make the playoffs.
Shut up. Other games, really. Jaguars and Colts. I mean, Colts don't have Anthony Richardson. Congrats on the Jags finally getting a win.
Shout out Joe Flacco. 360 yards and 3 touchdowns.
You got a loss.
If Joe Flacco is cooking, though.
Sounds like Joe Flacco.
I guarantee Cleveland wants Joe Flacco back.
That's true. That's true. Texans get a close win against the Bills. Stephon Diggs gets, I guess, revenge against.
Allen had a horrible game.
He did, and the
9
fact that
of 30.
The fact that he is not behind CJ and the odds for MVP shocks me because of that.
And also, I don't know were you watching this game at all?
The Texans game, I did not.
So it looked like Allen got concussed in the game.
I heard about this. Okay, yeah. You're going to have to explain this to me a little bit.
Yeah, he smacked his head. He was getting sacked. He threw it away. And his head clearly hit the ground. Like,
yes.
It should have been taken out. I think he got taken out for a play. And then was immediately put back into the game.
That sounds like Josh Allen, though. He's someone that would ruin his career because of that.
I feel for the trainers out there, especially like with these quarterbacks that are making a bunch of money. Because like if the quarterback says they're fine, and you know the front office wants them to play it, they're paying him $55-60 million a year. It's a tough call if you're the trainers. Like, hey, no, you can't go back in this game. When really, like, they probably shouldn't go back in the game, but they end up going back in it anyway. AKA Tua, Allen. I don't think Allen's concussion is long term. Like, he might be on the injury report this week and next week. But like, look at Tua. Tua is the perfect example of that. So,
yeah. I don't think we need to talk about the Chiefs. Decent, good, solid win.
I got one thought.
Okay.
What if take all the cool things that happened this game. Like that whole Chiefs team. Wouldn't that be the greatest team of all time? Like 6 years ago, in prime Kareem Hunt, in prime Juju Smith-Schuster, and Travis Kelce. I felt like I was watching 2018 all over again, bro.
Crazy. No, their team. Jamal Charles was in attendance. It was so crazy. It was honestly fun to watch. But they improved the 5-0. Good win for them. We mentioned the Vikings also improving the 5-0. Cowboys get a close win against the Steelers at Pittsburgh. I feel like Dallas has beaten Pittsburgh multiple times in Pittsburgh over the last couple of years for some reason.
I feel like you're right.
But
Dak is the first quarterback ever, I think, to complete a pass 2 different days in the same game.
Oh, yeah, because of the rain delay. I didn't even think about that.
I think Fields did too, to be fair. But
it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. No, I'm trying to look here on Dallas versus so Dallas has won in 2016. Oh, good Lord, that felt like yesterday though, because that was the game where Zeke broke off at the last couple seconds.
That was the fake spike that Big Ben had that we thought that was the game, and then Zeke broke off for 40-yard touchdown.
That was a crazy game, and obviously they don't play enough for it to be relevant talking all the times that they've played each other. But the last time Dallas lost in Pittsburgh was in 2008. The score was 20-13. Tony Romo and Ben Roethlisberger both played. Tony Romo had more passing yards than Ben Roethlisberger and still lost.
Sounds about right.
Yep. That's exactly what you would expect. Pittsburgh had Pittsburgh didn't even have a rusher with over 25 yards and they still won. That sounds like a Pittsburgh team. But the last game I really wanted to talk about, unless you have something that you want to hit on. I get injuries happen, but it's time to hit the panic button if you're San Francisco. It's time to hit the panic button because your quarterback is playing really well. He did not lose that game for you. What lost that game is that defense that has been terrible all year.
I think a big part of the Niners losing this one is the kicker getting injured, because that affects a lot of your decision making of what you're gonna do. Like if you're 4th and 4 on the 30, instead of like, oh, you know what, we're gonna take our field goal. We trust Jake Moody. Now it's like, do we really want to try out Mitch Wishnowsky to kick a field goal anything longer than? Well, I'm saying anything longer than 35, 40 yards.
I get it.
So,
it's just, man,
who would have thought?
Defense is not that good though.
No, this defense is more names than it is production so far this season.
It's really bad. Shout out Kyler though, when he broke away for that 50-yard run, he knew right away. He points up in the sky like he's like, I got it. But it was a hard game to watch for me, obviously being a Brock Purdy guy, but also being a Cardinals fan. I did send a text to former 515 Sports Podcast co-host Max Olson, who's a Seahawks fan. We always love talking NFC West just because we have that connection. But I sent him a text and I said, I want it to be known that I am cheering for Arizona. And he's like, okay, at least I know that because I know that you like Brock Purdy a lot. And I was like, I got to cheer for Arizona. I was like, best case scenario, the final score is like 49-50. Arizona wins, but Brock Purdy has 7 touchdowns. But that didn't even come close. And Brock Purdy ends up with 2 interceptions, 244 yards passing, and 1 touchdown. Kyler had 195 yards, also had an interception and a touchdown. Wasn't really an impressive game by Arizona, but it was an impressive win by them because they were able to come back.
Who would have thought through 5 weeks of this season, the leader in the NFC West would be Seattle? And second place would be Arizona.
And guess who the 49ers play next week?
Seattle?
At Seattle.
That's always a good game. That is always a good game when they go up to
Seattle. It doesn't get easier for them. They're at Seattle, then at home versus the Chiefs, then at home versus the Cowboys, at Tampa Bay, back home versus Seattle, at Green Bay, at Buffalo, and then you play the Bears at home. The Bears at home is the first one that I'm like, that is 100% a win. And
Even then, bro. I mean,
Even then, that's what
the
I'm saying,
Bears
though.
have been playing good the last 3 weeks. Like, Caleb Williams has figured it out.
It's a messy situation. They need to get all their players back. Honestly, they need to get as many people back not named Christian McCaffrey. As long as they get as many people that are not named Christian McCaffrey, they should be able to hold themselves together until maybe he comes back. I don't know. They keep pushing back the date on when he might play. Who knows if he's even going to play again this season or at all this season, because he hasn't played at all. So that was just one thing I wanted to point out. If you had, would you still take San Francisco to the Super Bowl over anybody in the NFC? I guess you didn't even take them. Who did you take again?
I picked the Packers.
Would you still take Green Bay over San Francisco?
Man, it's tough because like I was watching that Rams Packers game on Sunday, and Jordan Love is like the last true gunslinger I think we have in the league, or one of few that we still have, where it's like he will make an unbelievable throw, and then I look at the pick six that he threw. It's like, dude, what are you doing? Like, come on. I still really like Green Bay, but I mean, I don't really believe in Minnesota, but Minnesota looks like they're on the track to make the playoffs. I think Detroit, until something changes, I think they're the favorite right now in the NFC. Atlanta's looking pretty solid, although I do think Atlanta will choke come playoffs. I mean, I'm not falling for the Cowboys trap again, so like, I don't know. I don't really know what to think of this NFC right now.
Yeah, it's a mess, to say the least. That pretty much rounds out our NFL side of things, or at least our talk. We're going to get to our new top 5 segment that we've been doing on just random things. This time it's top 5 stadium food / snacks. Dawson, we'll start with your list here at number 5.
Sir. All right. Number 5 is ice cream, bro. I feel like this applies to not only like any sport like you're at a game for. Baseball, basketball, football. Ice cream is always good, especially if it's a hot, like if it's fall football or it's a summer day in baseball. I feel like this is just phenomenal. And I know Brock, the clone cones or whatever, he's a big guy on those.
I don't know what you're talking about.
Yeah. I'm sure that's going to be within this top 5 at some point, but yeah, that's number 5 for me. This is more personal. Everyone that knows me knows I was an extremely picky eater growing up, and still am, to be fair. Chicken tenders and fries was always the go-to at a stadium.
Dude.
Still is. Like, I feel like you can go at almost any stadium, see chicken tenders and fries, and be like, I know that's going to be at least a 6 out of 10. It won't be 10 out of 10 every time, but it won't be a 1 out of 10. But you always know what you're getting with chicken tenders.
Oh, yeah, for sure. Dude, I'm hungry. I haven't eaten yet. I haven't eaten.
I haven't either. So
this is gonna make me hungry, man.
I got popcorn next. This one more is kind of a basketball one. I don't really eat popcorn when I'm at a football game, if that makes sense. I don't know. It's just weird, but popcorn, something you could snack on, something that's not super filling, so you can have a bunch of it. So yeah, I feel like popcorn you can also eat at almost any sporting event. I mean,
dude,
this
I must be a hot take. I hate hot dogs.
Really?
And hot dogs at 2.
Hot dogs are so well. You're gonna like number 1. Number 1 is, I think, the undisputed GOAT for me. But hot dogs, again, that's same with the chicken tenders. Like, you know what you're getting with hot dogs, and that is a staple when it comes to watching baseball games.
Disgusting, dude. Hot dogs are disgusting.
That's crazy. I need to see your top 5 before you're criticizing hot dogs at 2. But number 1, this is the undisputed GOAT for me. You get a warm pretzel with salt and cheese, bro. Oh man. Maybe I'm just biased that Kinnick has phenomenal warm pretzels when they're like fresh.
I need one.
Oh man, dude. You can go to almost any stadium across the country and they're going to have a half decent warm pretzel, but that is like my go-to if it's not like tenders or popcorn or hot dog.
I had
that rounds out my top 5.
State basketball tournament last spring. Oh, so good. It's so salty, but so good.
You need the salt to balance out the cheese. So.
Yeah, that's a good point. My top 5, peanuts.
Okay.
Number
Okay.
5 is peanuts, dude. It's more of a baseball thing where you can literally any other stadium, not baseball, I can't eat and then throw the shells on the ground. For some reason, baseball is just a different vibe for me. So, and they're easy to snack on. A lot of these are honestly more snacks than like food-ish. I mean, it's still food, but like you get the point. So peanuts at 5, they're just easy to snack on. And this is another nut though, roasted almonds with like the sugary glaze, like all that stuff that we get those all the time at Iowa State basketball games, and they're warm because they're under the heater and everything, and they're so good. They're amazing to snack on before a basketball game. Warm pretzel in number 3.
Okay, I gotta see what 1 and 2 are before I critique too much.
A warm pretzel, it's really good. The salt though can get a little excessive, which I mean, you mentioned the cheese can drown it out, but I always have to get either like a big Powerade or like a huge water just to wash it down.
Well, I will say this: you ever had a warm pretzel with cinnamon and sugar?
Ooh, yes.
That is phenomenal.
Have you ever had it with like melted cheese and pepperoni on top of it?
No, but that sounds really good.
Yes, it is really good. But warm pretzel at 3. Number 2, chicken tenders with fries.
Sir.
Same with Dawson. I was a picky eater growing up. Still kind of am. You can't go wrong with chicken tenders and fries, man.
That's a life lesson. You can never go wrong with some chicken tenders and fries.
Seriously, honestly that might be something I'm doing after I get done recording here at 8:47 on a Tuesday night, looking for dinner. But number 1, clone cone.
Yeah, I knew it.
Dude,
I knew the clone cone was going to be somewhere.
And anytime you can get something Iowa State related, it looks like it's like a tornado. The way that obviously the swirl and everything, it looks like a cyclone. This cup that they use now is different. They actually use a basketball, so it's kind of cool looking. And you're buying it for one person, but you can share it with multiple people. Because they put so much ice cream. That is a low serving of what they usually give for a clone cone. It's amazing. You can share it with people, and it's the only time in winter. I mean, like the best weather is winter weather when you're going inside and still eating ice cream. So, clone cone specifically, not ice cream, clone cone specifically at number 1 for me on my top 5. But no, I liked your list outside of the hot dog. I'm not gonna lie.
Oh, that's
hot dog
crazy, bro.
I can't do hot dogs.
Are gas.
I'm sorry.
I will say, hot dogs have a low floor. Like you can get a bad hot dog.
That's why I've had some bad hot dogs.
Dude, you get a good, fresh, warm hot dog, dude.
We'll have to figure out what our next topic's going to be, but this is fun to do. But we'll be back next week. Enjoy the games this week. I don't even check before we go because we got like a minute or so. What is Thursday night's game?
Ooh, that is the Niners-Seahawks game.
Niners-Seahawks. So we got a good Thursday night football game, and then we'll round it out with a Jets versus Bills game. So watch out for the Jets. Usually when a team fires their coach, for some reason they win the next week. So for Dawson Livingston, I'm Brock Bierman. Make sure to follow us wherever you get your podcasts on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or SoundCloud. You can watch all of our live streams or our recordings on YouTube, Facebook, and Twitter, and then follow us at 515 Podcast on social media. So we'll see you guys next week. But until then, enjoy the games.